Hey guys, and welcome to the first tutorial. This tutorial is going to be on shading, and many of you have probably already done something similar to this, but it is always good to practice. For those of you that haven't, get ready to learn something new. So I do have an example of what I want you guys to do today, already made. So if you look up at the top, we're going to do 4 different value scales. The first one is just going to be pencil shading. The goal with this one is just to try to not see your lines. Now I know mine's not perfect, you can see some of my lines, but you want to have a pretty even tone throughout the whole box. So this one is really light pencil, this one's a little bit darker, this one's medium, and this one's dark. The goal is to have a transition from light to dark where every box is different, and really try to make it so that you can't see your pencil lines. The next one is going to be stippling. So this one we're going to do with pen. You can use a fat Sharpie, a skinny Sharpie. The fat Sharpie would take less time, or if you have like just a black marker, that would work too, or any colored marker would really work for this. With this one, again, you're going to go from left to right, lightest to darkest, and to make this darker, you're just going to keep adding more dots to each box. This is a really great way to shade if you don't feel super comfortable with pencil, just because all it is controlling your hand and adding dots. And then this one is going to be hatching. So again, you're going from light to dark. The left is going to be the lightest, the right is going to be the darkest. You're just hatching, so you're just doing straight lines with your hand. If you would like to use a ruler for this, you can, but it's better to freehand just so that you get the kind of practice. So you want to add a lot of lines going the same direction on the right hand side, and then the left hand side is going to be the least amount of lines. And then the last one, I think is the funnest one. Whatever mode of scribbling works best for you would work for this. This is a nice way to shade if you're trying to do something a little bit more rough. So on the right hand side, I have a continuous line. It doesn't have to be continuous if you don't want it to be, but we're starting off light, just adding a little bit of a scribble, and then getting darker as you go towards the right. So I'm going to show you guys how to set up your paper. The first thing you want to do is draw 4 boxes. So you can do this with a ruler if you want to, you could do this with a freehand if you wanted to, but you just want to make sure that you have room for 4 boxes. So try and make them long so that you can fit 4 boxes inside of each box. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then you're going to split them into 4 sections. So an easy way to do that is to just half the rectangle and then half it again. So these are not perfect. I'm not asking them to be perfect. I just want you guys to get this practice. Alrighty. So the first one is going to be pencil. So if you want to just kind of mark pencil. Second one's going to be stippling. So you can label it stippling. Third one's going to be hatching. And the only one you're using a pencil for is going to be the first one. So all of these 3 are going to be with a pen. And you can use the same pen, or you can try out with different pens. So this is going to be scribbling. Okay. So for your pencil shading, I have said in the past to shade with circular motions. I still think that you should try to shade with circular motions, but if it's easier for you to go back and forth and make your lines as kind of least obvious, you can go back and forth. It's kind of up to you. If you're between pencils, if you're not sure which one to use, I know a lot of the times these ones are really nice to write with. I would stay away from the Ticonderoga ones, just because the lead in them is a little bit harder to shade with. So if you have a pencil like this, just a regular Papermate one, I would use that one. And then I've sharpened it. Mine's really sharp right now, if you can see that. But I'm gonna try to just kind of like dull it down a little bit. So just kind of scribble with it a little bit on another piece of paper to start with so that the point isn't so pointy. Alrighty. And I like to go from right to left, from darkest to lightest. It's kind of up to you which way you guys want to go. But I'm going to go from darkest to lightest. So what you want to do is you're going to start in the corner. You want to kind of take your time with it. Again, try and go in circular motion so that you can't really see the edge of the mark you're making. But if you want to kind of like go all the way across the box, if that's easier for you, you can do that too. If you go back over top of the shade that you're making, it'll kind of like even it out, if that makes sense. So I'm doing long circular motions and trying to keep the pressure of my pencil the same throughout. I'm trying to keep it in the box, so I'm not really going past the box, but I'm gonna clean that up in a second. So I'm kind of going back over to smooth out my shading. Alright, so now I'm going to go this direction and just kind of smooth out the top of it by going in the other direction. You can also go all the way down in this direction to kind of smooth out your lines. Remember, the goal is to not see any of our pencil lines, so whichever way works for you is okay with me. So if you see that an area is darker, try and darken up the rest of it. I would like for you guys not to use your fingers to smudge with this. If you want to take a tissue and kind of smudge it that way, you can, but try not to use your fingers to smudge because all of the oils on your fingers can kind of make it a little bit icky. So you want to go as dark as you can without making it shiny for the one on the right. And then as you move over, you're going to kind of add less pressure. So if you want to kind of shift your hand back on the pencil, that kind of helps you add less pressure. But again, whichever way works best for you, I would again try and just kind of go in circular motions instead of like straight back and forth. But add a little bit less pressure this time around. If you start off too light, you can always add more pressure to it. And again, try to make it so that you can't see your lines. So go over anything that looks lighter. If one area looks darker, try and make the whole box darker. Shading gets easier the lighter you go, I think. Especially if your pencil is kind of like dulled down a little bit. It kind of makes it easier to go on. And if you guys can see, I'm kind of facing my pencil away from where I'm trying to outline. So if I'm trying to outline this side of the box, my pencil is facing towards it and my hand's facing away. So don't be afraid to kind of move your hand around. And then if you can kind of see your lines going this way, maybe go over in this direction to kind of smooth out the shadow or the valley. All right, so now we're going to go even lighter. So a little bit less pressure if you want to move your hand back on the pencil, that helps too. So even lighter than that box you just did. Your pencil should be a little bit dull now, so it should be easy to kind of like add the pencil. And again, go in circular motions to try and smooth out all of your pencil lines. If you do end up making it area darker and you didn't mean to, like right here I made it a little darker, you can take your eraser and just kind of like erase out some of the pencil a little bit and then go back into it instead of making the whole box darker. But again, just try and smooth out the lines. And then this one is going to be the lightest, so you're just brushing, well that's too dark, you're just brushing the pencil over top of the paper at this point. I would use the dullest point of your pencil to do this. This is actually a little bit trickier because you almost don't want to add any pressure. So as light as you can possibly go. If you have anything underneath your paper, like right here I have something underneath my paper, it's gonna make the pencil darker. So try to make sure there's nothing underneath your paper when you guys get started. But as light as you can possibly make it. Okay? So when you squinted it, you should be able to see a really kind of like transition between the lightest to the darkest. So it should go really, really, really light, kind of medium light, medium to dark. And no pencil lines if you can help it. All right, so stippling, I would use a fat Sharpie if you have one. If you don't have one, a regular marker works for this. You probably don't want to use like a thin Sharpie or a really thin pen because it's going to take you forever. So if you do have a thicker marker, try and use one of those. So I'm going to start by adding dots to my right box. When you add these dots, you want to kind of keep your hand on the paper so that you're not like jamming the pen into the paper, and you're picking up your hand every time you make a dot. So you're not like making any dashes, you're really just trying to make points so that they're kind of even, perfect dots. Don't leave your pen on the paper too long, so that's going to make the dot a little bit bigger than the rest. And then when you're adding your dots, you don't want to go in like lines or rows. You want to kind of make them sporadic, so make them random. But this one on the right hand side, the dots are going to be closer together. So you don't have to like fill up the whole space, but you want to make them close together so that it does look kind of dark when you squinted it. Once you get used to it, you can go kind of quickly with this. But again, just try not to make any dashes. The point in this is to make them dots. And you shouldn't hear like really loud taps when you're tapping your pen against the paper, otherwise you might end up destroying your pen. So just kind of gently. Alright, and then as you move towards the left, you're going to add fewer dots. So start with your dots further apart, but again, still make them random. And then again, even further apart with the next box. And then for the first box, you're going to add very few dots to make it pretty light. So when you squint at your value scale, you should see a value. I'm looking at mine right now and I feel like I need to maybe add more dots to this one because this one's looking a lot darker than it. So if you kind of squinted it and you think that like these ones are too light and this one's really dark, then just kind of like add dots to the boxes on the left side so that it looks more like a gradient. Because what we're going for is a value scale, so you want it to go from light to dark. Alrighty, so hatching is, it can be kind of challenging because you want to try and make straight-ish lines. If you don't make your line go all the way across the box, that's okay. But hatching is a really nice way to shade, like if you're drawing a bug, it's a nice way to shade the wings, like kind of just like in sketchy lines. Or if you're drawing a face, sometimes hatching can be really nice to shade around the face. These techniques are usually for pens, so that's why they're kind of so specific. But once you get the hang of them, you can kind of add this shading to anything that you're drawing and you don't have to use a pencil. So hatching, we're going to do it in straight lines for now, but if you were to try and like shade around something circular, you would draw your lines kind of like that, and it's kind of just like a continuous line. So with hatching, you can go in whatever direction you want, but I would do diagonally. If you want to do horizontally, you can. I think diagonally is a little bit easier though. So keep your hand in one kind of position and just move your hand back. So I'm going to keep my hand like this. I'm going to start in the corner, and I'm just going to kind of like really quickly move my hand in the same motion as I go across the box. So I'm not really making it all the way across because I don't want my line to get like wiggly, but I'm using the same motion. I'm kind of just like flicking my wrist to go all the way across the box. And it's okay if you have a little bit of white space over there. The goal is to try and keep your lines parallel, but not to use a ruler for this, and to kind of flick your wrist and use the same motion as you move across the box. So with the box next to it, you want to add more space in between your lines, but again, the same motion. So kind of take your time, but like as you're drawing your line, you want to flick your wrist and kind of make the motion quick. And then again, you're going to add more space in between, sorry, as you move towards the left. So this one you might only have like 4 or 5 lines in it. All right, scribbling, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just want to make sure you're adding more lines on the right hand side, so you can do whatever you kind of want. You can kind of like go all over the place. You could do more controlled scribbles. Just try and keep it in the box as best you can. This one we want a little bit of white space, not too much. You kind of want to fill the box and keep it quite dark. This one you're going to add a medium amount of white space, so kind of keep your lines a little bit further apart, but again, try and fill the box. And again, scribbling is a nice way to kind of shade if you're doing something kind of a little bit more sketchy. And then the last box, you're not going to add many lines at all. These two right now look kind of similar, so I am going to add a little bit more to this one just to keep it a little bit darker than the first one. And now this one I feel like I need to make a little bit darker. So you can always adjust your boxes once you finish with them if you do feel like they need some more lines to them. Alrighty, and those are your 4 shading techniques. Stay tuned. I'm going to show you guys how to shade different 3D shapes. So I'm going to show you how to shade a sphere, a cube, a pyramid, using some of these techniques. But practice these until you feel like you're comfortable with them, until you feel like you have a handle on them. And these I do want you guys to turn in through Canvas, or you can always email me a picture of them. But please try and send these in to me for your assignment. Alrighty, thank you guys so much.